I've always enjoyed late-night walks. There's something about the stillness that makes everything feel simpler. I'm a welder by trade, been doing it for over 40 years now. I live alone on a big farm, just me and my dog Bosley. The house is too large for one person, but I never had the heart to downsize after my wife, Maria, passed away. My kids moved out years ago, and ever since cancer took her, it's just been me and Bosley. One night after a long day in the shop, I decided to go for a walk. My property is pretty big, so just a single loop is usually enough to satisfy my craving. The air was cool, and Bosley trotted along beside me. Sometimes I think he likes me more than I like him. I'd walked that loop hundreds of times, but as I was heading back toward the house, something caught my eye. I glanced up at the second-story window, the one that looks out from the bedroom Maria and I used to share. For a split second, I thought I saw something move. I stopped dead in my tracks, staring up at that window. There was no reason anyone should be in there. I hadn't been in that room in years. I just couldn't bring myself to. I felt my blood start to boil at the thought of some stranger breaking into my house. I wasn't going to stand for that. I rushed inside, my heart racing, and ran upstairs. The room was empty, just like I'd left it. No sign of anything out of place. I looked everywhere imaginable but found nothing. Yes, I was pretty freaked out, but I was more angry than anything. I didn't take this kind of thing lightly. I figured I had just seen something that wasn't there. I stood there for a while, feeling foolish, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there. The next night, I woke up to Bosley growling. He's a good dog. Never barks unless there's something to bark at. I sat up in my bed, listening. That's when I heard creaking coming from upstairs. It could have just been the sounds of my old house, but my mind went directly to footsteps, which were coming from right above me. I'm sure you could guess which room is directly above mine. I debated grabbing my hunting rifle from downstairs, but didn't want to go that far. If it came down to it, I was fully confident that I could take whatever was up there hand to hand. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. Again, nothing. The room was exactly the same, untouched. My anger was definitely starting to turn into anxiety at this point. Something didn't feel right in the house. The following night, I came downstairs to find the kitchen lights on. I know I turned them off before bed. I don't leave lights on. There was no question anymore. Someone was in my house. I started to panic. I called the police and told them I thought someone might be sneaking around. They came out, searched the house from top to bottom, but found nothing. They were nice about it, told me to call again if I needed them, but I could tell they didn't believe me. The next night was the worst by far. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go upstairs and check the bedroom again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would settle my mind, but when I opened the door, I froze. There were clothes scattered all over the floor. Maria's clothes. I had packed them away after she died. Now they were everywhere. Something like this doesn't just happen randomly. And then I saw her. There was a woman standing in the doorway, just staring at me. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could tell she wasn't Maria. She was too short. I don't know who she was, but she didn't belong there. I had never been so afraid in my life. Without thinking, I ran at her. She turned and bolted down the stairs and out the front door. By the time I got outside, she was gone. I searched the property with Bosley, but there was no trace of her. I didn't sleep that night. For months after that, I couldn't sleep. I was constantly on edge, convinced I heard footsteps upstairs at night. Every little noise set me off. I slept with my rifle next to my bed, terrified that I'd have to use it one night. I debated calling my brother to come stay with me, but I wasn't going to do that. I was raised to always handle my own, so that's what I did. The nightmare didn't end, though. One night, I was sitting in the living room when I noticed a figure standing in the yard, looking straight at me through the window. It was her again. My heart felt like it stopped. I grabbed my hunting rifle and ran outside, Bosley close behind. She was still there, just a silhouette in the moonlight, watching me. I fired a few warning shots into the air, hoping to scare her off. That was enough to get her to turn and run into the darkness, but it's not like that made me feel any better. I was literally being tormented by some random woman who was probably homeless. I couldn't even imagine why this was happening to me. I stood there for a long time, waiting to see if she'd come back. She never did. I haven't seen her since, but I know it's only a matter of time. I'm fully prepared to defend myself, but I don't think living in perpetual anxiety like this is sustainable. Thank God for Bosley. I have no idea what I'd do without him. I'll send an update if anything happens. A few weeks after that night, I still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching me. An eerie feeling filled my home. Every creak in the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves outside my window seemed amplified, making my heart race. At first, I tried to tell myself it was just paranoia, but it didn't help. My dreams were filled with shadows lurking in the dark, their presence heavy and suffocating. One evening, I found myself staring out of my living room window, watching the street outside. The sky was an inky black, and the street lamps cast a pale glow over the deserted road. Just as I was about to turn away, something caught my eye. A figure, cloaked in shadow, stood at the corner of the street. It was too far to make out any details, but I felt their gaze as if it were a physical weight. I blinked, and they were gone. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. For days, I kept catching glimpses of the figure. At first, it was only outside, standing by the street, half hidden by a tree, watching me from a distance. But then things started happening inside my home. I'd hear faint whispers, just out of earshot, as if someone was speaking from another room. Doors would creak open by themselves, and lights would flicker for no reason. Every shadow seemed to stretch just a little longer, a little darker, and I could feel the figure's presence growing closer. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. I froze. I lived alone, and no one else had a key. Slowly, I walked toward the door, my heart hammering in my chest. The knock sounded again, more insistent this time. With trembling hands, I reached for the doorknob and pulled it open, bracing myself for whatever was on the other side. But there was no one there. A cold breeze brushed past me, chilling me to the bone. I looked down the hallway, half expecting to see the figure standing there, but the corridor was empty. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as my imagination. I closed the door and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easily that night. Over the next few days, the activity in my house escalated. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway, even though no one was there. Objects would move on their own, shifting from one place to another. I felt like I was losing my mind, and I was too terrified to tell anyone. Who would believe me? I started leaving lights on around the house, hoping it would keep whatever was haunting me at bay. Then, one night, as I was lying in bed, I felt a strange heaviness in the air. It was suffocating, pressing down on me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. I opened my eyes and froze. Standing at the foot of my bed was the figure, shrouded in darkness. I couldn't see their face, but I could feel their eyes on me, cold and unforgiving. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear, trapped under the weight of their gaze. The figure reached out a hand, its fingers long and twisted, and touched my forehead. A chill shot through me, so cold it burned, and a flood of images filled my mind. Flashes of places I'd never been, faces I didn't recognize, voices whispering words I couldn't understand. The figure leaned closer, its breath icy against my skin, and whispered, "You can't hide from me." Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The weight lifted, and I could move again. I gasped for air, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest. I didn't sleep at all that night, too afraid that the figure would return. I decided to leave the house the next morning. I packed a bag and drove to a friend's place, not bothering to explain why. I just told them I needed a break, a change of scenery. They welcomed me with open arms, and for a few days, I finally felt safe. But it didn't last. One night, as I was staying in their guest room, I woke up to the same suffocating feeling. I opened my eyes, and there it was, the figure, standing by the window, watching me. It had followed me. Panicking, I stumbled out of bed and ran into the living room, hoping my friend would be there. But when I reached the room, it was empty. The house was silent, too silent, and I realized I was completely alone. I looked around, trying to find a way to escape, but every door was locked, every window shut tight. The figure appeared in the doorway, blocking my only exit. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The figure didn't answer. It took a step forward, its form shifting and melting into the shadows. I could feel its presence in my mind, filling me with a deep, primal terror. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then, everything went black. When I came to, I was back in my own bed, as if nothing had happened. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over the room. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, a figment of my imagination. But when I sat up, I noticed something strange. On the floor, right by my bed, was a single, black feather. I picked it up, feeling a shiver run down my spine. The feather was cold to the touch, almost unnaturally so. I knew, deep down, that it was a sign. A reminder that the figure was still out there, watching, waiting. I tried to go on with my life, convincing myself that it was over, that I was safe. But every now and then, I'd find another feather in the most unexpected places, on my doorstep, in my car, even inside my locked drawers. The figure was still with me, haunting my every step, a shadow that I couldn't escape. And so, I learned to live with it, this dark presence that had claimed a part of my life. It was always there, lurking just beyond my vision, a constant reminder that I was never truly alone. And I knew, deep down, that one day it would return. One day, it would come back for me.